These cameras are so close to being identical. You might be wondering, seriously, what is the actual difference? Because one of them costs a few $100 more. What is the deal with the Canon M50 Mark II and the Canon M6 Mark II, specifically as it applies to creating and shooting videos for YouTube? Let's talk about it. These cameras have way more similarities than they do differences, and we're going to be talking about this in terms of video, but if we were going to talk strictly photography, I'd say the M6 Mark II is the way to go, simply because it has a bigger sensor. So you would be able to get bigger prints out of your photos and have more options when it comes to cropping. But we're talking videos, and both of these cameras are Canon's M series. They both take the same size lenses. They're completely interchangeable, and of course I love my Sigma 16mm lens, which I can use on either of these. A difference you may want to know about though is that the M50 Mark II can shoot 1080 at 24, 30, and 60 frames per second, or 4K at only 24 frames per second, and the M6 Mark II can shoot 1080 at 30 and 60 and 4K at 30 frames per second. Now, if you already know what those things mean, you can skip forward about 30 seconds. If not, stick with me here. If you shoot at 1080 and 30 frames per second like I do, then either of these cameras are going to work great for you. If you wanted to shoot some B-roll and have that slow motion cinematic look, all you have to do is bump up the frame rate to 60. And again, either of these cameras are going to work great for that. But if you want to shoot your YouTube videos in 4K, you'd probably want to go with the M6 Mark II, but honestly, you'd probably not be looking at either of these cameras if you wanted to take 4K seriously. So I have had both of these cameras for about a year. I ordered the Canon M50 Mark II when Canon announced it, but that was a pre-order and I had to wait. I was a little impatient. So what I did was also ordered the Canon M6 Mark II that very same day, because it was also Amazon Prime Day. So I've been using these cameras interchangeably throughout the last year, both for my YouTube videos and any Zoom calls or live streams with the Video Pursuit Society. When it comes to the actual quality of the photos and videos out of each of these cameras, they're essentially identical as far as what I have experienced in how I shoot my videos. I will often maybe have both of them running and then use both of the footage, and you really can't tell the difference which camera it came from. As long as the settings and the white balance and everything are set to the exact same settings, it's really the same either way. So there isn't an upgrade in terms of quality if you go with either camera. For the last 6 months or so, I've had the Canon M6 Mark II set up directly behind my computer monitor. I'm recording on it right now. It sits there on the tripod. It's always plugged in. It's always hooked up to my computer, and it's always ready to go for Zoom calls or live streams. And then I keep the M50 Mark II out here as kind of a rogue agent, and I can pick that up. I usually have the battery all charged up. I also have a plug-in dummy battery too, but I can just grab this and use it for B-roll or to create anything I want with it, and then leave the other camera behind my monitor as my webcam. Plus, for recording videos where I am talking directly to the camera like this, I really like having this fully articulating touch screen. It's a lot easier, I think, when you're talking directly to the camera, because with the M6 Mark II, it has a flip up screen. It really gets in the way of the whole mic setup, really no matter what mic setup you have going on there. So the flip out screen is a lot better. Plus you have that record button there, and you don't have to feel around and try and hit record when you can't even see the button. That record button on the screen is a small but really important detail, just like the Wi-Fi button here on the side of the camera. You can connect both of these cameras to your computer, your phone, your iPad, and really pretty seamlessly transfer your media from your camera to those devices. But with the M50 Mark II, all you have to do is hit that button to get that Wi-Fi connection going. Plus, the Canon M50 Mark II will record your vertical video in a vertical video format if you turn the camera sideways. Now, Can you create a vertical video on the M6 Mark II? Yeah, of course. Just turn your camera sideways. But the video file that comes out is still going to be horizontal. You'll have to switch it around in your editing software. Whereas with the M50 Mark II, it'll already be vertical. The actual video file will be output as a vertical video, which is a little bit of a convenience factor, especially if you're going to record TikToks, Reels, or YouTube Shorts. The M6 Mark II is a little bigger, is a little heavier. It feels like a more substantial camera. It also has this weird looking attachable viewfinder, which is fine. I don't usually have the viewfinder on there, so it keeps it looking clean when it's not on there, but it's kind of weird looking. Whereas the M50 Mark II just has that integrated viewfinder like you would typically find on a camera. Another slight difference is the M6 Mark II has the USB-C connector where you connect it directly to your computer, whereas the M50 Mark II is still going with the micro USB connection, which is a little outdated. I mean, we're getting down to the first world problems between the two cameras here, but when so many devices have switched over to the USB-C, you would think this would have switched over too, but it hasn't. Where you're gonna see the biggest difference is in the price. There's about a $400 price difference between these two cameras, and if you're creating YouTube videos where you're talking to the camera, I highly recommend that you invest in the Sigma 16mm lens. It's about 400 bucks, but it gives you that really great blurry background like what you can see behind me. So if you take that $400 lens and you put it on the less expensive of these two cameras, the M50 Mark II, you're coming up at about the same price as the M6 Mark II without the fancy lens. I recommend the M50 Mark II with a Sigma lens all day long. And if you have either of these cameras or you're thinking about getting one of them for yourself, you can check out my next video over here on how to get it set up with all of the right settings to shoot your videos or binge the whole playlist.